Hello, and welcome to the seventh episode of Arts for Mental Health podcast with your host, Asha Ponnachan, in collaboration with Madhura Geetam. We continue today with our guest, Jenna Dolly, who is a powerhouse advocate, a changemaker who's been in the field of social work and therapy and um, so many other things, community development, and has her own practice called Elevated Shifts that helps individuals and families with therapeutic services. And to top it all off, she is a mother of two young children. And on that note, how do you maintain work-life balance, which is something you promote, work-life balance as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter, as a granddaughter, change maker, therapist, and all of these kinds of things? What do you do?
Yeah, one, I am flexible with myself, that I realize that my, 15-year-old self is not my 25-year-old self, is not my 41-year-old self. And so every time I grow and I transition, I think about the things that I need and adjust. So one of those ways is being flexible. But for me, routines are really helpful, right? They create predictability for me and they reduce stress. It also helps my family just kind of know that there are some things that will always be consistent and happen. Clear boundaries around work and family life. I can be a workaholic. And so for me, I really do have to put those boundaries in place. I use being present as something that just is a reminder to myself, like, are you being present right now? Like, are you playing Barbies, or are you thinking about the report that you have to write tomorrow? So I'm constantly grounding myself and being present and giving whatever and whoever is in front of me my undivided attention and my authentic self. I do emotional check-ins. And so this is about opening dialogue at home. Our home is a place where you can be you, where you can say how you feel in a respectful way, and in a way that is expressing your needs. And so we encourage that open dialogue. And I use the support, family and friends, the community that I've built around us, and of course my spouse, who is always, often, sometimes not willingly, my sounding board for a lot of things, or the dump that happens out of my brain into his lap.
Hey, he said I do. He should have known what he was getting into when he said I do.
He did. And I do a lot of healing work, and I think that word has been a buzzword for a long time in sort of the conversations around mental health or wellness, or this concept of self-care. But really, healing can look and feel like a variety of different things. So, like, growing up, I did, take on quite a bit of responsibility. I always kind of felt like I had to do a lot of things just to help around the house, or help my brothers. And so I didn't participate in a lot of activities, maybe because I didn't voice it. But, as an adult, I was like, what's one thing that could heal that part of, like, feeling like I missed out on those activities that my kids I now cart around to everywhere. And so I joined an adult gymnastics class.
We will come to the creative part
in
just one second, which you did a great segue into that question. I just want to do a quick recap. So one thing is showing grace to yourself.
Yep.
Being really forgiving to yourself. If you haven't been able to do something, don't beat yourself up. And the other thing you mentioned was your routines, having a routine for yourself, whether it's a morning routine, nighttime routine, afternoon routine, lunchtime routine, whatever time you've got 5 minutes in the day doing that routine. The other thing you mentioned was setting boundaries, clear boundaries. Whether it is with your family, whether it is with your patients, whether it is with your workplace, other activities, friends, and anybody else who rightly has demands on your time, on our time.
Yep.
And I find that oftentimes, at least for me and for a lot of women in particular, setting those boundaries is quite difficult. Especially from a South Asian culture, we're not taught to set boundaries, and it's sort of like it's glorified. Your burnout is glorified, and so for our own sake, this kind of setting boundaries is really important. That we also touched on this in a previous episode where we were talking about relationships and relationship management. So if you haven't watched that, we'd highly recommend going back to our second and third episodes and watching those. And great segue, thank you very much. What creative practices do you do now that help with work-life balance and improved mental health?
So a couple of creative practices that I like to indulge in is I am always looking for DIY projects, with the caveat that I'm actually really not talented in art or making things, but I like the process of trying. And I've really put down that perfectionism mentality that sometimes we do carry as racialized people to get it right, to make it perfect, and just kind of get messy and try the process of being creative. I remember going to a paint night, and I remember asking, the facilitator, like, am I doing it right? Like, does it look good? And he, turned to me and he says, well, how do you feel? And I was like, I'm having fun. Like, I really like this process. He's like, well, you're doing it right. And so that was a really big takeaway for me of like, just be present, just enjoy the process of creativity. It's not supposed to feel like work.
So was it a sip and paint night, or was it just a paint night?
It was a sip and paint night. There were a couple of things in my cup for sure. But
you should have done a little more sipping than less painting.
I think that's why it looked the way it did. But I hang that picture up right in front of where I do my private practice as a reminder to be creative, and to indulge in things, and to try new hobbies. I also use my community as a way of cultural and artistic expression. In community, there's dance, there's food, there's art, there's specific ways of dialoguing, there's language. And so when I'm in community, I feel the most creative, because I am around like a creative, artistic energy that naturally comes with being part of a community. For me, it's mostly, my Black and Caribbean community, but also when I am invited into spaces where I get to partake in other people's community, I get to experience that and bring that into my life as well too. And that for me feels like rest, which is another, a way in which we can actually look at it in terms of art is how do we rest? We can get creative about how we rest. And it's not just, lying on a pillow and going to sleep, but you can do active rest. And in active rest, there's the opportunity to be creative.
That's right. It's one of the 7 forms of rest, is creative rest. And before we ended the last episode, you also touched on an adult gymnastics class.
Yeah.
So what's that all about?
Oh my goodness. In not being able to always maybe voice that I wanted to try new things with my parents or activities. I grew up with 2 working parents who didn't always have a ton of income. And so sometimes as kids, you know this and don't ask for too much. And so when there were activities that were, cost effective or free, I was able to do them. But one of those things that kind of was out of our price point was gymnastics. I signed up for an adult gymnastics class, and I'm currently working on my cartwheel. But it has been such a wonderful healing experience, creative experience, something that is just for me. I literally can turn off my brain and go into the gym, and I'm surrounded by other women who have, different goals, but, the same concept of wanting to be together in community while we work on things. And it's just a wonderful space.
Yeah, someday we'll have an episode in one of these places where we can actually.
Yeah, let me get a few more practices in, and then I'll be able to show you my my Olympic somersaults.
Another curveball. Well, this is maybe not so much because we were talking outside before we got into the studio about community, and you mentioned creative rest within the community space. We were talking about a time when I grew up, when you grew up, when even though we both had 2 working parents each, there was a community that looked out for the children. So this the stress in every way was shared. And how do you think that is aggravating, or the lack of community today is aggravating mental health issues for racialized people?
Right. Well, I mean, I think for people in general, but yes, there's definitely a caveat to talk about, racialized experience with that. But I think if anything, COVID really demonstrated what happens when people are isolated and are doing life individually. And so when we are confronted with some of the, systems of oppressions that we have to operate within while we're working on dismantling them, like capitalism that pushes the narrative of like you, um, you it can definitely take away from what we knew, what we grew up as, like the value that is community and having people around you. I sometimes joke and laugh with other folks who maybe grew up with like smaller families or not that same kind of community culture, where like, what do you mean you like people aren't just always in your house?
Yes,
what does that mean? Because but because there were always people there, there's always someone to talk to.
Yeah.
There's always someone to say, oh, come with me, to go somewhere. Like you couldn't stay in your funk or your rut for too long because your community was always there supporting you, talking with you, helping you carry on with your routine, etc. And in my private practice with folks who have the ability to connect into any community, whether they have to build it or whether they can reintegrate into one, I promote that as part of their goals and what they're trying to achieve, because we are moving away from connected communities.
This is so true. Like to this day, I don't know how to cook small meals because my mom always cooked so much for a family of four that it was just this thing that anyone who comes home has to be fed,
Yep.
whether they're hungry or not. And
Right.
it would be like, eat something,
Right.
eat something. So to this day, I'm cooking extremely large meals, which we have to eat for days on end.
But doesn't it bring you so much joy to think about, like I remember that, like, yeah, everyone on a Sunday would probably pass by to say greetings or whatever, but they could have a meal.
Yeah.
And so doing that a little bit and then being like, oh, now you're the house where, like, when I was a kid, people would come over.
Yeah.
Your mom's making oxtail. Okay. Your mom's making curry chicken. I'm there. Right. And all of a sudden you have all of these friends at your house and there's always enough.
Yes.
And so sometimes I try to carry that tradition on in my own home, and I'll look and half the basketball team is there, but it warms my heart to see, 10 pairs of shoes at my door because you just came off the court and now you're coming home and there's a big enough meal for everyone to partake in.
It's true.
Yeah.
And my mother was a nurse, and therefore a lot of people would bring their children for one reason or the other. And sometimes, the parents need to go somewhere. The little children were left in my house. I remember waking up one morning as a 9-10-year-old child myself, and there was a baby on the bed next to me. I was like, okay, where did this baby come from? Like, I've not seen this child before.
Yeah.
Like, mommy. But that was the way. If somebody needed something, it was not a question of will you. It's just like, hey, I need something, and then everybody gets together and helps them out.
Yep.
And that was, I guess, I shouldn't say that was. I'm sure there is still a communal system, but we all need to find our own communities. And that's when I say our own, I don't necessarily mean by any sort of definition of ethnicity or anything else. I mean a community with whom you can vibe, and a community who vibes with you, and on whom you can depend, like the 3 a.m. friend concept, right?
Yes.
And this will really help with the growing epidemic of depression and anxiety and stress and insomnia and all of those kinds of issues that are existent and growing within our societies. On that note, we are close to the end of our episode. What would you like to leave our audience members with as tips that they can take away?
I think you'll find nuggets throughout our conversation of ways that you can begin to prioritize your mental health or work on your work-life balance. That can definitely come from within, but there's various mediums and forms and resources that you can use, because you can, check out a book, you can watch a podcast, you can get in touch with a professional and set up your own therapeutic interventions. And you can also begin to start to explore yourself and the things that bring you joy. There's 4 questions that I ask myself every single day. What is your food intake? Which means like, how are you nourishing your body? What is your water intake? Because we definitely need water every day. How have you experienced joy today? And how have you connected to community? And if I can cycle through those questions daily, generally I'm having an okay day. And when I find that all 4 of those things are falling off, is where I need to, rethink some things and kind of try and figure out how I can get back on track.
Wow, how have you experienced joy today and how have you connected with community? That is so important. A lot of times, to be honest, I don't think about how I've experienced joy. I'm sure I feel joy at some point during the day or at many points, but I don't think about that as often as I probably should. So here's hoping that you are experiencing joy each and every day and that you actually take time to jot that down, be grateful for it, and think about your connection with the community around you. And the art form that we're talking about in these 2 episodes is storytelling. As people of color, as racialized people, as people who have immigrated here, and also integrating with people around us, there is there is a vast stock of stories that we can take advantage of. So listen to other people's stories, tell your own stories, and hope these stories heal. Thank you very much for watching.